may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys. Unsure if y'all are aware, but the NFL draft is approaching. The best time of the year. I don't care what people say. I don't care that, yes, opening week is very exciting when we finally get to see players in action. But no, the best event of the entire sports calendar, regardless of whatever sport you're talking about, is the NFL draft. And of course, we are extremely excited about this. We are going to be nonstop live streaming, whether that's on the Dynasty channel, whether that's on this channel. Haven't decided that yet, but what we have decided is our entire rookie draft guide, that is shaping up to probably be 60 to 100 pages of information that I think is going to be extremely valuable for anybody playing in a 2021 fantasy football league, but more importantly, playing in a Dynasty fantasy football league. You have to get your hands on this draft guide. I have to hear your opinion. I've been working on it for so long now, and it will be available after the NFL draft. That way I can add the landing spots and get those finalized set of rankings. Of course, that's going to be found on Patreon. I would rather just give it to everybody that's supporting the show on Patreon rather than charging someone $60 for the draft guide on its own. No, what I'm trying to do is we are trying to grow this Patreon community. So if you want, go down there, join our flock. That's going to be either in the comment section or the description of the video. And also right now you can find our updated rookie rankings for all positions as well as these stack up compared to each other over there on Patreon as well. But anyway, let's get into this. And what we are going to be doing in this video is we are going to be looking at these wide receiver rookie rankings. And I know that a lot of people have done this, but I'm excited. I want to talk more about these prospects. And yeah, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Let's jump into it with everybody's wide receiver one. It's going to be JaMarr Chase. And yes, let's address the elephant in the room. So coming into the offseason, we looked at the production profiles of both JaMarr Chase and Devonta Smith. And I said, hey, you know what? These wide receivers are neck and neck. I'm going to go with Devonta Smith because we have the production profile. And if we get the athletic measurables, if we get the size concerns actually confirmed with Devonta Smith, that's when we can make the switch. That's when we could drop Smith down. We can vault JaMarr Chase up to that wide receiver one role. And JaMarr Chase not only doesn't have the size concerns, but he also comes out and in his own pro day puts up very impressive measurables. And I want to reiterate with everybody about these rookie wide receivers coming into the NFL. While yes, you would rather a wide receiver be athletic rather than not athletic, generally, the number one thing that you are going to be looking for is production with context. You want production at the wide receiver position over athleticism. As compared to the running back position, we know that athleticism really doesn't mean that much because at the wide receiver position, you win more so with skill. You win so based on being able to separate while you run your routes. You win so at the catch point. Every wide receiver wins in a different way. So it doesn't matter what your real athletic profile is. As long as you meet some minimum thresholds, we can get excited about you if you have that college production, especially at an early age, and especially if you had wide receiver competition at your college. And that's exactly what JaMarr Chase did. Okay, so JaMarr Chase, no, he did not perform as a true freshman that you would like to see, but he was playing on LSU. I mean, you can cut the man a break. The LSU offense, of course, is loaded up with high prospects every single year. LSU is almost at the top of the recruiting class ranks every single season. You have constant 4 to 5 star guys going into that program. So JaMarr Chase doesn't produce year one, but he comes out and in his sophomore season with Joe Burrow, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, with more importantly, Justin Jefferson, he is the number one receiving target on that team. He is the number one wide receiver in terms of yards per game and touchdowns. He just completely vaults Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson has more receptions, but we have JaMarr Chase being the more productive wide receiver. And what's most impressive about this is they were both young at the time, but JaMarr Chase was actually a year younger than Justin Jefferson. Obviously, Jefferson comes into the NFL, puts up arguably one of the best rookie wide receiver seasons of all time. So now we're looking at JaMarr Chase, a wide receiver prospect that broke out early, has a nice production profile given the context of his offense and the other weapons that was in it. Then throw in the fact that he has the testing measurables, and I guarantee you he is going to be a top 10 NFL draft pick. Now, I've been saying some things like if Javonte Williams goes in round 1, I'll eat my shoe. I'll do the same thing here. If JaMarr Chase falls outside of the top 10 in the NFL draft, I will come on right away as soon as that 10th pick is made and it's not JaMarr Chase. I will live stream, and the live stream will be called Mason eating his shoe because he's an idiot. That's all it will be. JaMarr Chase will be a top 10 NFL draft pick. And that way, he is checking every single box to be in his own tier as our wide receiver 1. All right, so now let's go down to our tier 2, and we're going to lead it off with our wide receiver that was formerly our wide receiver 1. This is going to be Devonta Smith. And Devonta Smith, this is a case where he is going to be one of the most polarizing wide receiver prospects that we are going to see this decade. Because not only is he coming in at 166 pounds, which is just an extreme outlier, and that's what's going to get all the conversation centered around it. But more importantly, if we are going to be looking at his prospect profile, what you need to see with these prospects is you need to see the early breakout age, and you need to see early dominance at the college level, where Devonta Smith didn't necessarily have that opportunity. Because you look at his true freshman season, he was playing in an offense that had Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Irv Smith Jr., Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris. I mean, he was playing in an offense with so many great pass catchers. You can even throw in the fact that there were other NFL running backs in there like a Damian Harris as well as a Josh Jacobs. So you can't blame Devonta Smith for not getting that production. But the problem is he really didn't see a ton of production his sophomore season either. That's going to be the one thing that we look at. That's going to be the one thing that just kind of stands out for Devonta Smith, because we can rationalize away the fact that he didn't produce when all those wide receivers were there. But then when you get to that sophomore season and Calvin Ridley leaves for the NFL, at that point, you're wanting to see something from Devonta Smith, and he didn't provide you with that much. But what is going to erase all worries of that is not even this past year where he won the Heisman, not even this past year where he accounted for almost 50% of the receiving yards for Alabama, which literally just simply doesn't happen at that level of college football. That doesn't happen at Alabama. It really never has. If you look at Julio Jones, you look at Amari Cooper, none of them were nearly as dominant as Devonta Smith in his final season. But the season that I am more impressed with Devonta Smith is not the year where he had that insane production. It's actually 2019 where he was able to come out and at the same age, he was able to outproduce Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, and Jalen Waddle. Now, we can safely assume that Jalen Waddle is going to be a top 15 NFL draft pick. So at that point, we are looking at it and we go, you know what? Devonta Smith at the same age was more productive than 3 other wide receivers that were top 15 NFL draft picks, and they were all in the same exact situation. Now, that is what makes us bullish on Devonta Smith. That is why I cannot lower him down past our wide receiver 2, despite the size concerns, despite the fact that he is coming out after 4 seasons rather than 3. And we know that what you want to see with these wide receivers is you want to see them break out early. You want to see them come out after 3 seasons. Devonta Smith did neither, and Devonta Smith has the size concern where he's only 166 pounds. But like we said at the beginning of the video, production is almost everything. Production with context at the wide receiver position. So based on what we saw from Devonta Smith in 2019 as well as 2020, I think it's safe to say that if he found himself in a different situation where maybe instead of catching passes from Tua or Mac Jones at Alabama, just say he decided to go to a school like Oregon instead, there, I think we can't say for sure just because it didn't happen, but more likely than not, he would have broken out at 18 years old. More likely than not, he would have been that elite producer after his true junior season, and he would have declared for the NFL draft then, and those questions would be gone. So now let's go down to our wide receiver 3. We are still in this second tier, and we are going to be looking at Jalen Waddle. Now, Jalen Waddle, I think, is a fantastic wide receiver prospect. I'm a little bit worried about where he is going to go in the NFL draft because where he is currently being mocked, there are some disgusting landing spots like the New York Giants. Even after they sign Kenny Golladay, he's even being mocked to a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. I am on record saying that I think Jalen Waddle is actually going to go before Devonta Smith in the NFL draft based on the fact that the NFL, they love their athleticism. And while being a purely athletic field stretching wide receiver, which I'm not even saying Jalen Waddle is, I'm just a little bit of afraid that that's how he's going to get used at the NFL level. I understand he can be more than that. I understand that he can run crossing routes. He can run slants. He can run almost the full route tree. And that's what we saw at Alabama. But we also saw Henry Ruggs running more routes than just vertical routes at Alabama as well. And then once you get these highly athletic guys, once you get these field stretching wide receivers, at least guys that have that potential to the NFL, sometimes the NFL coaching staff goes, you know what, they can do this, but they're going to be a lot better for our offense if they are just continuously running go routes, and we don't even necessarily have to get them targets, but it will increase the overall efficiency of the offense. So I'm a little bit worried that's going to happen with Jalen Waddle, and I'm a little bit worried that he's going to find himself in a bad situation. But if we are simply talking about these players in a vacuum, where we know that Jalen Waddle is going to get the draft capital, we know that when he got the opportunity at Alabama, he was productive. I mean, there were games that he was more productive than Devonta Smith in 2020 before he suffered his ankle injury. So with Jalen Waddle, you're looking at a highly athletic, a high pedigree wide receiver that's going to get the NFL draft capital. So because of this, I think that he has a high floor. The ceiling is a little bit in question because with these wide receivers that are speedy guys, with these guys that don't profile to see a lot of volume, generally you want them attached to that quarterback that can give them that elite level of efficiency, because these wide receivers, they're not going to win on volume. You need to win on efficiency. Right now, it doesn't look like he's going to be mocked to a team like that, but who knows? The NFL draft hasn't happened yet, and until so, Jalen Waddle is going to be our wide receiver 3. Okay, so now let's go to another very polarizing wide receiver prospect, another guy that some people are going to be worried is a little bit more of a gadget player, but this is going to be Ronalddale Moore coming in at 4. So obviously, the reason Ronalddale Moore is going to be a complete outlier is the fact that he's 5'7". We've talked about this before. Literally, everybody at this point knows that Ronalddale Moore is 5'7". I mean, if you go and ask your grandma, you go, hey, Grandma, how tall is Ronalddale Moore? She goes, oh, the 5'7" midget guy? That guy that's trying to play in the NFL? I mean, nonstop it has been talked about this offseason. But what has gone on under the radar just slightly is not even his athletic profile, because people will talk about how great of an athlete he is. People will talk about that vertical jump. People will talk about him squatting an insane amount of weight. Now, all that stuff is great and it's exciting. What I more so care about is I care about the fact that he was one of the best players in college football at 18 years old. He was one of the most productive wide receivers in college football, winning awards, just going out and putting up records at 18 years old. Now, having not only that college dominance, but combined with that breakout age and having the two go together on a true freshman season like that, that simply doesn't happen. That simply doesn't happen unless you are an elite wide receiver prospect. Now throw in the fact that Ronalddale Moore is that elite level athlete. So you're looking at someone who has an elite production profile despite being hurt his past 2 seasons in college, which, yes, it is a completely fair thing to say that, hey, Mason, he's a 5'7" wide receiver. What are you expecting? Of course he's going to be hurt in college. That's a fair argument to make. But we are looking at someone that had elite production at a very young age coming in, combined with the fact that he's an elite level athlete. So I have to get excited about this. I have to look at Ronalddale Moore and go, you know what? He's a top 5 rookie wide receiver for us. Now, NFL draft capital with Ronalddale Moore is going to be massive, because if Moore falls to the late second round with that kind of athletic profile, it's going to tell us a few things. It's going to tell us that really that team could possibly be using Ronalddale Moore a little bit more as a gadget wide receiver rather than a traditional wide receiver. And obviously, that's not what you want. Obviously, you don't want him coming in and becoming Tavon Austin. But still, I'm looking at Ronalddale Moore and I'm going, you know what? This is someone I'm wanting to go in on. This is someone that I am wanting to go take the risk. While yes, the floor is low, I think the upside is extremely high. Now, we also need to see a landing spot where the coaching staff's going to know how to use someone like Ronalddale Moore. I mean, if he goes to a team that the coaching staff really is run, pass, and they aren't that creative, then in that case, it looks like Ronalddale Moore could be dead. But until we see that, I'm going to have Ronalddale Moore at number 4. Now, I think what we are actually going to do here is I think maybe we cut this video into 2 parts just because we are running late here and I want to continue to dive deep with these wide receivers. I would rather just make 2 videos where we can talk about them in depth rather than rush through the last 6. So let's dive into Elijah Moore here, our last wide receiver at 5. Then tomorrow we can go through and we can get the rest of our wide receivers. But anyway, Elijah Moore at 5. I know this is probably going to be higher than you see him anywhere else. But with Elijah Moore, let's go back to those boxes that we look at. Let's go back to what we care about, and that's production with context. Okay, so Elijah Moore wasn't extremely productive as a true freshman. That is something that you generally don't like to see. But then you dive into it. Then you look at the context of the situation where he was. And Elijah Moore was playing with some wide receivers. You may have heard their names before. I think his name is A.J. Brown. I think he's an NFL wide receiver. I can't remember for sure. Please go down to the comment section. Let me know if A.J. Brown's an NFL wide receiver. Let me know if he's any good or not. Let me know if him being on the team should affect Elijah Moore's production his true freshman season. Also, someone that missed some time that year but also was on the roster, also played in some games that would affect Elijah Moore on that depth chart, would be another NFL wide receiver. I think he's still on an NFL roster. I could be wrong, but it's going to be DK Metcalf. So I will say that, yeah, I mean, those wide receivers, you hear their names, and most of y'all probably aren't going to know them, but I know everything about the NFL, so of course we know who A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf are, even though they're a little bit under the radar players. But I think that should probably excuse Elijah Moore's lack of production his true freshman season. So if we give him the right on that true freshman year and we go, you know what we need to see now is we need to see you come out and put up something great your sophomore and junior season. And then he comes out in his sophomore year, puts up over 800 receiving yards when the next best wide receiver on the team can't reach like 250. And you're like, oh my God, Elijah Moore just completely took over. Elijah Moore just proved that he was a dominant wide receiver at 19 years old at Ole Miss. And then we're like, oh, hey, Elijah Moore is on the radar now. That's very exciting. Then he comes out in 2020 and goes, you know what? Watch this. Let's put up 150 receiving yards a game at 20 years old in the SEC. So then you go, okay, Elijah Moore, this is an extremely exciting production profile, and that's all we care about at this wide receiver position. Production. And I know that y'all are probably going to be saying, well, then Mason, why is Elijah Moore not up there at wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4? And it's because Elijah Moore is a little undersized. Now he's a great athlete, but being undersized may make him just be a slot wide receiver. And if he's a slot wide receiver, I think what we have to compare him to is I think Elijah Moore at this point just looks like a more athletic Tyler Boyd. And if that's the case, I think that in your dynasty rookie drafts at wide receiver 5, that's going to be something that we can get excited about. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Of course, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. And yeah, that's it. I will come out tomorrow with another wide receiver ranking video, and we can dive into our next 5 guys. I want to give a big thank you for everyone joining the flock. Devin Strom, Alejandro, Mark, Jared, Caleb, and IV of Lean, Randotron, Micah, Larry, and Tyler.